Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Well, welcome to another edition of Update News. It's Wednesday, a very, very busy Wednesday.
Very busy Wednesday.
Are things like settling down around here?
No. We have a lot to do, with a small crew, and everybody's busy and working so hard. I mean, talk about a great ministry to be able to say, well done, good and faithful servant, by putting money into it. This is the ministry you want to put money into, because we've got a crew that works just tirelessly.
Okay, I have to tell them this funny story that happened yesterday. Rick says that he was outside and he was mowing. And when I say mowing, I'm talking weeds and this and that. The alternator went out on our mowing tractor. He couldn't get the brand new weed eater to work. And we've used it one time, or he's used it one time, he and Corey. And so anyway, he's out there and he's just covered. He's a mess. And a woman who had gone to the bookstore is waving to him because she wants to talk to him, right? And
I love talking to folks. I just hate I hate to look so messy when I'm talking to folks.
And as he's telling me this story, I look like my normal self, which is not like this. Most people never recognize me in public. And we were just joking about what a glamorous life we have here at GLC. What went wrong today? Just today. What happened today?
Our pumps that really take care of all of our restrooms went out.
Okay, well, we have a couple of septic tanks out here because we're way out in the county.
Yes, exactly. So the pumps take care of the septic tanks, which take care of the bathrooms, which take care of our employees.
And guests.
So what went out today? Our printer went out today that we rely on every day to make duplicates of all of our DVDs to send out to all of our viewers.
And by the way, we're having the septic tank pumped tomorrow.
Yes.
One of them.
Yes. So there were a lot of things that went wrong today, but it's okay. What went right is the crew is awesome, and we're still here.
Everybody always still has a really great attitude no matter what is going on behind the scenes here. It's just, you just can't even imagine. It's just absolutely hilarious most of the time, the stuff that goes on. Anyway, we've got some great news for you today, and we're going to get started on that. The first article is a combination of FoxNews.com, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services website, and the website of the Texas governor. According to the website of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the number of unaccompanied alien children, that's a UAC, entering the U.S. has grown from 6,000 in 2011 to a projected 60,000 in 2014, a 1,000% increase. UACs apprehended by the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, are transferred to the care and custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the ORR. The majority of UACs are cared for through a network of ORR-funded care providers. So it's a government thing.
Okay.
Which are state licensed. The care providers operate under cooperative agreements and contracts and provide children with access to legal services, case management, classroom education, health care, socialization and recreation, vocational training, mental health services, family reunification, as well as a continuum of care including foster care, group homes, shelters, and treatment centers.
Wow.
I know. UACs come primarily from Guatemala, 37%, El Salvador, 26%, and Honduras, 30%. Mexico came in at around 3%. Now, less than 25% are under the age of 14, and approximately 3/4 are male.
Wow. Well, according to a story released by Fox News, a new report puts the price of educating the thousands of illegal immigrant children who recently crossed into the U.S. at a whopping, get this, $761 million this school year alone, as some school systems push for the feds to pick up the tab. Well, the estimate comes from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, also known as FAIR, which issued the report on the 37,000 unaccompanied minors after analyzing data from the Department of Health and Human Services and education funding formulas in all 50 states.
The numbers underscore the concerns critics have raised for months about the burden the surge is putting on local school systems and governments. State and local property taxes pay for nearly 90% of the cost of K through 12 public education. The federal government pays for the rest. The report, which breaks down the costs state by state, indicates that the biggest impact will be seen in California, Texas, Florida, and New York, which leads the list with a bill of over $147 million.
Incredible. Well, while immigrant rights groups say that it's a small price to pay for helping kids in need, some jurisdictions are balking at paying their share for the unaccompanied minors that flooded across the border earlier this year. Well, the single largest concentration of unaccompanied minors is in Harris County, Texas, where a total of 2,866 UACs are now living with sponsors and attending public schools, according to government data. Maria Marino, principal of Las Americas Newcomer School in Houston, estimates that 140 of her 350 students this year are new arrivals from Central America.
Well, the challenge in Texas and elsewhere is a shortage of qualified bilingual teachers and the higher cost of teaching students who speak no English. According to one report in 2006, it cost at least 30% more to teach a non-English speaking student than it does to educate the average English speaking student. In addition, the recession took a toll on available dollars for education funding. 35 states are still spending less per pupil than they did in 2008, and school infrastructure is suffering. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, the average age of K through 12 public school buildings is 44 years. More than half are in need of repair, with the total cost of bringing them up to good condition pegged at $4.5 billion. In the meantime, immigration hearings are taking place on all of these UACs, and it will take, by many estimates, at least 2 years to get through the backlog.
Well, in late July, Texas Governor Rick Perry announced that he was using his executive authority to activate up to 1,000 National Guard troops to help secure the border region against what he described as an assault of criminal activity by undocumented migrants. In a speech he gave when making the announcement, Perry said that since 2008, over 203,000 criminal aliens have been booked into Texas county jails. Over the course of their criminal careers, these individuals have committed more than, get this, 640,000 crimes, and that's in the state of Texas alone. This includes more than 3,000 homicides and nearly 8,000 sexual assaults. The governor said that the current surge of undocumented migrants crossing the U.S. border, which include many unaccompanied minors, is a human tragedy, but that equally concerning is the fact that children traveling alone make up only 20% of those who are apprehended along the border.
20%? That's not very much.
No, it's not.
Especially when you're considering that we've had 37,000 plus UACs come across just this year so far.
And this is a gigantic problem.
It is gigantic.
Yeah.
And now we have a few shorts from the Debka file. A 22-year-old Palestinian was shot dead while hurling a firebomb at Israeli troops who entered the Al-Amari refugee camp near Ramallah early Wednesday to arrest a wanted Hamas operative. Some 50 Palestinians took part in the riot. throwing stones and Molotov cocktails at the Israeli soldiers. 5 more Hamas operatives were detained in other parts of the West Bank.
President Barack Obama held a phone conversation with Saudi King Abdullah on Wednesday, just hours before he delivered a speech unveiling his strategy for defeating ISIS in Iraq and Syria. The content and tenor of their conversation were not disclosed. Many have speculated about Obama's apparent bow to King Abdullah in April of 2009, just months after he was sworn in as president.
Part of their speculation comes from the fact that he did not bow to Queen Elizabeth,
Wow.
who has been ruling in, Great Britain since the 50s, early 50s, like 1953,
So
I
didn't
think.
show the proper respect for her.
Yes. So that's why there was so much speculation
Yes.
about this. And Palestinians in the Shiafat suburb of Jerusalem launched a fresh rock and firebomb assault Tuesday on Jerusalem's light train, causing damage to the cars but no casualties. The light train is the public transportation that even we on our tour rode. Once again, no one was arrested, although the attacks have been recurring almost daily in recent weeks. The internal security minister and the district police chief claimed earlier that Palestinian disturbances in the capital were dying down because of police restraint on orders from the government. Both officials admitted that the torching of the French Shell gas station and looting of its store 2 nights ago was a very serious occurrence, but they denied the police had avoided venturing into the neighboring Palestinian village of Issawaye to arrest the lawbreakers. The village is notorious for its anti-Israel violence.
Okay, more news. This comes to us from the AFP and the AP. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has threatened to break off a unity agreement with Hamas if the Islamist movement does not allow the government to operate properly in the Gaza Strip. The threat drew an angry reaction from Hamas, which denounced the president's allegations as baseless and raised fresh questions over the future of a fragile intra-Palestinian unity deal aimed at ending years of bitter rivalry.
In remarks published by official Palestinian news agency Wafa, upon arrival in Cairo late Saturday, Abbas said, "We will not accept the situation with Hamas continuing as it is at the moment. We won't accept a partnership with them if the situation continues like this in Gaza, where there is a shadow government running the territory." Abbas's remarks came on the eve of talks in Cairo with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and a key address to the Arab League.
In Gaza, Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuri denied charges that Hamas was hampering the operations of the National Consensus Government, the composition of which was jointly agreed on by the former rivals. "It is untrue, baseless, and unfair to our people," Abu Zuri said, indicating that Hamas representatives would meet soon with their counterparts in the rival Fatah movement to discuss fleshing out the reconciliation deal that was inked in April.
Well, the unity deal sought to end years of bitter and sometimes bloody rivalry between the Islamist Hamas movement and its Fatah rivals, who dominate the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority. Under the terms of the agreement, the Palestinians agreed to form an interim consensus government of technocrats, ending 7 years of rival administrations in the West Bank and Gaza. The new cabinet, aimed at preparing for long-delayed national elections, took office on June 2nd, with Gaza's Hamas government officially stepping down the same day.
Despite the handover, Hamas has remained the de facto power in Gaza, with moves to implement the provisions of the unity agreement put on hold in the face of the defensive Operation Protective Edge that Israel launched on July 8th. The war began after 3 Israeli teens were murdered in the West Bank by Hamas operatives in June, prompting Israel to arrest hundreds of Hamas members there. Rocket fire from Gaza on Israeli cities then escalated, and Israel launched a massive air and later ground campaign in retaliation. Fighting lasted almost 2 months.
Well, several Egyptian-mediated ceasefire attempts failed during the conflict, and several temporary truces were broken by Gaza militants. Hamas eventually accepted almost the same truce offered at the beginning. Although Hamas and Fatah put up a united front throughout the conflict, working side by side to further indirect truce talks with Israel, their long-held divisions again came to the fore as the guns fell silent. Just days after an open-ended ceasefire ended the 50-day confrontation, Abbas cast doubt on the future of the Palestinian Unity Government during a Palestine TV interview when he blamed Hamas for extending fighting with Israel in the Gaza Strip.
During the interview, Abbas said, "It was possible for us to avoid all of that. 2,000 martyrs, 10,000 injured, 50,000 houses destroyed." He said Hamas had insisted on discussing demands first before ending the war, which only served to prolong the violence needlessly. More than 2,100 Palestinians were killed, including hundreds of civilians. 71 people on the Israeli side, including 6 civilians were killed. Israeli government spokesman Mark Regev said after the truce was reached on August 26th, the Egyptian formula was on the table on July 15th. It was backed by the Arab League. It was accepted by Israel, but rejected by Hamas then and now, more than a month later, has belatedly been accepted by Hamas.
Earlier in August, Israel announced it had arrested nearly 100 Hamas operatives in the West Bank in an alleged plot to bring down Abbas. In an interview with Israel Channel 10 TV following the ceasefire, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "Abbas understands this group, Hamas, was about to topple him. We exposed that." Animosity between the two Palestinian groups erupted in 2007 when Hamas overran Gaza in bloody street battles, which ousted forces of the Fatah party led by the Western-backed secular Abbas. Abbas has since governed only in parts of the West Bank, and Hamas has ruled Gaza. Abbas is eager to regain a foothold in Gaza. With the international community shunning Hamas as a terrorist group, Abbas would be likely to operate Gaza's borders and oversee internationally funded reconstruction efforts.
The ceasefire brought an immediate end to the fighting, but left key issues unresolved. Hamas immediately declared victory, even though it is very little to show for the war. While Israel agreed to loosen a long-standing blockade to allow humanitarian aid and reconstruction materials into Gaza, many of the border restrictions will remain in place. Hamas, meanwhile, rejected Israel's demands that it disarm. These deeper matters are to be addressed in indirect talks in Egypt this month.
I think that I read somewhere that those are slated for like the 25th of September to begin around then. Okay, our next article comes from NBC News and Russia Today. Germany, small groups of hardline Salafist Muslims hoping to influence and recruit young people had been patrolling the streets of a German city, police said. The groups of young men wearing orange safety vests with the words Sharia police written on the back caught the attention of both residents and police in the German city of Wuppertal. The group was patrolling the streets last week, urging people to refrain from various sorts of activities and entertainment.
Police reportedly stopped 11 men aged between 19 and 33, and the young men are followers of Salafism, a puritanical form of Islam, one of the world's fastest-growing Islamic movements. The fundamentalists have been seen in the city's nightlife area, trying to urge people to refrain from alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, and other activities. They also reportedly distributed leaflets with the same guidelines. This was seen as a violation against Germany's public assembly law, and charges were filed, a police spokesman told NBC News. Officials say they have increased the police presence in the city. The government is considering the Sharia initiative an act of provocation. Germany's justice minister said that no illegal parallel law will be tolerated, as only the state is responsible for law compliance.
And meanwhile, a YouTube propaganda video from the German Salafist scene was posted online showing a poster with the English headline, Sharia-controlled zone, followed by images of Salafist recruiting young people and visiting gambling halls. The video is a new provocation and part of the Salafist propaganda, which shows that the scene does not acknowledge Germany's rule of law, a spokesman for the state's interior ministry said.
Wuppertal residents have also expressed concerns over the Sharia police appearance. The Wuppertal police chief said intimidation or provocation won't be tolerated. A hotline has been set up by officials, allowing locals to report any information regarding activities of the self-proclaimed patrol. The German media also cited Wuppertal's mayor, Peter Jung, expressing his support for the hard line taken by police on the group's actions. These people's intention is to provoke and intimidate and force their ideology upon others, the mayor said.
Well, officials say that approximately 1,800 people are part of the Salafist scene in the area, with 10% of the members considered to be violent extremists. German authorities fear that the Salafists have also been recruiting young men to join the Islamic State and other militant groups, encouraging them to travel to Syria or Iraq in order to do so. In 2012, the movement drew worldwide attention after announcing a long-term campaign to distribute 25 million free copies of translated Qurans into German homes.
Okay, well, this comes to us from the AFP, and we're going to turn our attention to London. Islamic State fighters appear to be using captured U.S. military-issue arms and weapons supplied to moderate rebels in Syria by Saudi Arabia, according to a report published on Monday. The report said the jihadists disposed of significant quantities of U.S.-made small arms, including M16 assault rifles, and included photos showing the markings property of the U.S. government.
The study by the London-based small arms research organization Conflict Armament Research documented weapons seized by Kurdish forces from militants in Iraq and Syria over a 10-day period in July. It also found that anti-tank rockets used by IS in Syria were identical to M79 rockets transferred by Saudi Arabia to forces operating under the Free Syrian Army umbrella in 2013. The rockets were made in the then Yugoslavia in the 1980s.
Islamic State is believed to have sieged large quantities of weapons from Syrian military installations it has captured, as well as arms supplied by the United States to the Iraqi army after it swept through northern Iraq in recent weeks. The Islamic State group holds roughly a third of Iraq and Syria, including several strategically important cities like Fallujah and Mosul in Iraq and Raqqa in Syria. It rules over a population of several million people with its strict interpretation of Islamic law.
Several million people.
That's amazing. I didn't know it had already grown that large.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge, and we're struggling to figure out what to do now. And the INS Tanin, Israel's fourth and most advanced Dolphin-class submarine, is en route to Israel from Germany. The Navy has released video of the vessel and the ceremony in which it was launched at Germany's Kiel shipyards. Reports claim Israel has modified the Dolphin's 650-millimeter launch tubes to allow the launch of missiles that could carry nuclear warheads. Such missiles would give Israel the ability to deter aggressive neighbors, but thus far, Israel has maintained a policy of nuclear ambiguity. Israel has already purchased a fifth Dolphin-class submarine at a subsidized rate from Berlin and has an option for the sixth.
The new Dolphin has state-of-the-art air-independent propulsion, which is AIP systems, which allow it to operate without the need to access atmospheric oxygen by surfacing or using a snorkel. This makes it virtually silent and potentially stealthier than nuclear-powered submarines. It is the most expensive single vehicle in the IDF's arsenal. But unlike the first three Dolphins delivered to Israel, it's modeled on the German Navy's Type 212 submarine, and not on the export-only Type 209. By comparison, the AIP Dolphins are 12 meters longer, nearly 500 tons heavier in submerged displacement, and have a larger crew.
Each Dolphin-class submarine is capable of carrying a combined total of up to 16 torpedoes and submarine-launched cruise missiles. Cruise missiles have a range of at least 930 miles and are widely believed to be equipped with a 440-pound nuclear warhead containing up to 13 pounds of plutonium. A wet and dry compartment is installed for deploying underwater special operations teams.
The German weekly Der Spiegel reported that the submarines are part of Israel's weaponry to counter the nuclear threat from Iran. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has denied that the submarines have nuclear capability. However, Jane's Defense Weekly reports that the Dolphin-class submarines are believed to be nuclear-armed, offering Israel both a first strike and a second strike capability. The Federation of American Scientists and GlobalSecurity.org report that the 4 larger torpedo tubes are capable of launching Israeli-built nuclear-armed Popeye turbo cruise, that's amazing, Popeye turbo, that's cool, cruise missiles, a variant of the Popeye standoff missile, and the U.S. Navy recorded an Israeli submarine-launched cruise missile test in the Indian Ocean, ranging 930 miles.
I find it a little bit interesting that it's Germany that Israel is buying the submarines from, because there's so much anti-Semitism going on in Germany.
Yes, as of late, it wasn't for the longest time after World War II.
Well, no, not at all. But one of their Israel's strongest proponents has got to be Angela Merkel. She's just absolutely incredible in that regard.
Is.
We have one more article we want to share with you that comes from Israel National News, and it's not good news. A beheaded corpse was found in the Sinai Peninsula Wednesday, residents said, bearing a note from a terror group linked to the Islamic State, alleging the victim was an Israeli spy. The note, which claimed the victim worked for the Mossad, said, "This is the fate of all who prove to be traitors in their homeland." Residents told Reuters that the body was found in a village in northern Sinai. This is the 8th victim in 1 month linked to the group, the al-Qaeda-inspired Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, which has allegedly taken inspiration from the Islamic State terrorist group, the most violent of al-Qaeda's spin-off terror networks. In a similar incident several weeks ago, 4 decapitated bodies were found in the same town. We shared that article with you, which is about 9 miles from the Gaza border. Egyptian police established that the men had been kidnapped from Cairo several days beforehand.
Ansar Beit al-Maqdis has claimed responsibility for a slew of terror attacks in Egypt and the Sinai since the military ousted former Islamist president Mohamed Morsi. Among the attacks claimed by the group was the assassination of a top Egyptian police general and the bus bombing of South Korean tourists in the Sinai. Meanwhile, Islamic State terrorism has been linked to similar copycats in Gaza after several reports have surfaced that the group's flags are flying in the region and that it has been behind rockets fired on Israel.
That's their flags flying in Gaza.
Yes.
So, yeah, they're there. They're there. And the news is around these parts that they are at the Mexico border, specifically already in Juarez, which is right across from El Paso. In fact, the sheriff from Midland did a television report on that. They interviewed him regarding that.
Yes.
So they are very, very, very close. One of the things that I didn't have time to pull this information into these articles was an interesting little fact about the rebel soldiers that have been fighting President Bashar Assad in Syria. I have articles that I have been saving for a couple of years on that, and I pulled them up to refresh my memory on exactly what had been going on. And indeed, we have been training and arming those rebel soldiers. So it's those rebel soldiers that the Islamic State has defeated and gotten the arms.
Yes.
And now the rebel soldiers aren't really talking to America much. They're kind of being cut out of the loop because we don't know who we can trust and who we can't trust, so we're just not kind of dealing with them at all, and they're kind of left high and dry. And I haven't found anything to verify it yet, but I heard yesterday that Saudi Arabia is building a wall between Saudi Arabia and Jordan to prevent terror attacks from the Islamic State. Well, we love you, and we will see you again on Friday.